Steve Spurrier on a podcast of the Gators Roundtable had some really interesting things to say about Florida's matchup with Alabama in the Swamp this year, going on to claim that he thought Florida would upset Alabama at home. And we have got to talk about this because I pinpointed this game a few days ago as one that I was interested in, but for a few different reasons. Before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you agree with Spurrier that Florida could upset Alabama in the Swamp this year? Let me know what you're thinking, and if you are new to this channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and I would love to have you a part of this journey. And if you do enjoy this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, let's talk about this, because the other day when I was talking about the Alabama A&M game, I actually went on to talk a little bit about Alabama playing Florida in the Swamp, and I was talking about how I was circling that game because it was Alabama's first test on the road. I understand Miami's a neutral site game, but it's neutral. It's a little bit different than having to go into a truly hostile territory, which they're going to have to do against the Gators. Now, the reason I brought that up in the video pertaining to A&M is because I thought that the experience Alabama would get going into the Swamp and then ultimately a few weeks later having to go to College Station would be paramount, whereas A&M really doesn't get tested in any sort of way leading up to that Alabama game. So I thought that Alabama having that adversity would pay off massively. But do I think that Florida will upset the Alabama Crimson Tide? It's very hard for me to believe. I mean, it is football, anything can happen, but it's very hard for me to believe. And when I look at Florida right now, there are three things I question with this Florida Gators team. First and foremost, what is your offense with Emory Jones? And let me explain, because it's much deeper than just questioning what the offense looks like with Emory Jones. How do you mitigate the losses of Tony and Pitts? Because they were such a large part of that offense last year. Obviously, losing Kyle Trask is huge. He was a Heisman finalist, but how do you make this offense click the same deadly way when you lose Trask plus the two weapons that were so dynamic? I mean, those guys were some of the most dynamic weapons in college football. Pitts maybe being the biggest mismatch in college football last year. How do you make this offense tick when you don't have any of those three guys along the offense, especially when you already struggled running the ball last year? You lose some linemen, and now you're taking a quarterback that's a bit more mobile, and the run looks to be implemented more. That's my first question, because if Florida already struggled running the ball last year, it's going to be interesting to see how they take this scheme that they had last year and transition it to a more run-heavy one with the current quarterback. I'm very interested to see how the offense comes together, how they mitigate the losses, and how the scheme transitions. To Florida's credit, Dan Mullen has shown that he has a variety of ways to be successful with multiple different styles of quarterback, so there is that. My second question for Florida is, will your defense be better than 83rd in the nation this year? Last year, you didn't have to rely on your defense because you had so many super weapons on offense, but you don't have them anymore. And now the defense is going to have to be better than 83rd. And while I do agree, I do think that they will be better than 83rd, I have a hard time imagining that the Gators will be that bad on defense again. I don't think that they're going to make massive leaps under Grantham. I just don't. When you watch that Florida team last year, there were a variety of things that seemed not to click. And I get it, it was a COVID year, but I just have a hard time believing that you'd see this massive jump from Todd Grantham's defense from an 83rd ranked defense to a top 25 ranked defense. And honestly, I think that's about where they'd want to be, is in that top 35 defenses in the nation with everything they just replaced on offense. Because even though Alabama loses a ton, that's absolutely true, Alabama at least gets to bring in a defense that returns 8 starters to the Swamp, and then one of the losses they have, Dylan Moses, is mitigated with a transfer from Tennessee who just happens to be one of the best linebackers in college football, and now you get to have that tandem of Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o in the inside linebacker position, not even to speak of the secondary that has so much experience and maybe the best pass rusher in college football. I certainly think that when it's all said and done this year, Will Anderson is going to be the best pass rusher in college football. I'm shooting my shot now. That's not really surprising. Anybody who's watched him play, I think think can get that takeaway. So that's my second thing, because your defense is going to have to be better. And my third and final question for the Florida Gators is, will there be more physicality? Because this right here, this last question kind of encompasses point 1 and point 2, but it gets to the juxt of my main point when I'm talking about this game between Alabama and Florida. Last year, when Alabama was running the football, they blew Florida off the line every single time. Now, Florida does have guys capable of high-level pass rush, let's make no mistake about it, but Alabama's offensive line whipped them in run sets last year, and it wasn't particularly close, because if you're going into this game right here where Alabama's replacing so much on offense, you can bet you're going to see a large percentage of the run, especially when they have as many talented running backs as they do, and they also have a quarterback that's more mobile, so you have to expect getting out in space. The problem with that for Florida is if they do call quarterback runs by design, they can really get this Florida defense off balance, keeping them on their heels the whole night, which is going to open up the pass. It's going to open up different things for the running back. Alabama's offense has some different variety to it this year. I'm very excited to see how that's all implemented. But that's my main thing with Florida on that third point is, will you have more physicality at the point of attack? Because Alabama replaces a lot on offense. They, in theory, will rely on the run during the early portion of the season, and you couldn't match the physicality last year when they were relying on the run. In run sets, like I said, Alabama's offensive line absolutely just mauled them, and Alabama is in a position where they return 3 guys, at least 2 for sure on that offensive line that got starting experience last year, and a lot of talented guys behind them. Now, there'll be growing pains, but still, the point remains. I am really excited for this Florida-Alabama game. It is a game I pinpointed, though I don't have the Alabama Crimson Tide losing this game because I don't think Florida's defense is going to be particularly very good, and they lost such a large percentage of their offense, and the one thing they're going to be relying on this year was something they actually struggled with last year, which was running consistently, whereas Alabama had a very consistent rushing attack last year and replaces a lot on offense, albeit with a lot of talent, and they kind of have a bit more saliency within the scheme they're going to be running because they were actually successful in that same scheme very recently. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.